Some secrets feel like stones in your chest, smooth and cold, growing heavier with every breath you don't speak them. For 23 years, I carried mine through childhood scraped knees, high school football games, and college graduations. I carried it through my father's proud handshakes and my mother's warm embraces. I carried it until the day I met Daniel, and suddenly the weight became unbearable. My name is Alex Carter, and this is the story of how telling my dad I'm gay didn't just change our relationship. It changed everything I thought I knew about love, family, and what it means to be truly seen. The Seattle rain had that particular October quality, persistent but gentle, like the city itself was thinking out loud. I'd been working at Morrison and Associates Architecture for 6 months, fresh out of grad school, still learning to navigate the delicate balance between creative vision and client reality. That Tuesday morning I was running late, coffee in one hand, portfolio case in the other, when I collided with someone outside Pike Place Market. "Oh God, the apology died on my lips. He was tall, maybe 6'1" to my 5'11", with dark curly hair that the rain had turned into loose spirals against his forehead. His eyes were this impossible shade of hazel green, and they were currently fixed on me with a mixture of surprise and something else, something that made my heart skip in a way I'd trained myself not to notice. "No, that was totally my fault," he said, reaching down to help gather the scattered drawings that had escaped my portfolio. His voice had a warmth to it, like whiskey and honey. "I wasn't watching where I was. Wow, did you design these?" He was holding up one of my concept sketches for the waterfront renovation project, and the genuine interest in his expression caught me off guard. "Yeah, it's just a preliminary." "It's incredible, the way you've integrated the natural landscape with the architectural elements. It breathes." He looked up at me, and that smile, Christ, that smile could have melted the rain right off the pavement. "I'm Daniel Chen. I'm a landscape architect," which probably makes me biased, but seriously, this is beautiful work. We stood there on the wet sidewalk, strangers connected by scattered papers and something neither of us could quite name yet, until I realized I was starring. Alex Carter." I extended my hand, and when his palm met mine, I felt that electric recognition, like my body had been waiting for this specific touch. "Thank you, that means a lot coming from a fellow designer." "Coffee?" The word tumbled out of him, half question, half hope. "I mean, to make up for nearly tackling you in the street, there's this amazing place just around the corner, unless you're late for something." I was late, I was definitely late. But as I looked at Daniel Chen with his rain-soaked curls and earnest green eyes, I made a decision that would unravel and rebuild my entire world. "Coffee sounds perfect." 3 hours passed like 3 minutes in that corner cafe. We talked about design philosophy, about the way buildings could tell stories, about growing up in the Pacific Northwest versus California. He was from San Francisco, which explained the effortless style. But beneath the professional conversation was another dialogue, one written in lingering glances and the way our knees touched under the small table, and neither of us moved away. "So, Alex Carter," Daniel said, wrapping his hands around his third cup of coffee, "tell me something real, not the LinkedIn version." The question caught me vulnerable, and maybe that's why I answered honestly. "I'm terrified," I admitted, "of being mediocre, of playing it safe, of waking up at 50 and realizing I spent my whole life designing other people's dreams while being too afraid to build my own." Daniel's expression softened and he leaned forward slightly. "That's not going to happen to you, I can tell. You've got this." Intensity, like there's a whole world inside you waiting to get out. "What about you?" I deflected, not ready to examine how deeply his words had landed. "What's your real story?" "I came out when I was 16, he said simply, and my entire body went still. "Lost some friends, kept the ones who mattered. My parents struggled at first, but they came around. Now I'm just trying to live loud enough to make up for all the years I spent quiet. Life's too short to be anyone but yourself, you know." He said it so casually, like it was the most natural truth in the world. Meanwhile, my heart was hammering against my ribs because here was someone who'd done what I'd been too afraid to do, someone who'd chosen authenticity over comfort. That's really brave," I managed. "It's really necessary," he corrected gently. Then, with a directness that would become his trademark, "Are you out, Alex?" The question hung in the air between us, and I felt the familiar panic rising, the same panic that had kept me silent through every family dinner, every workplace conversation, every moment that demanded truth. "It's complicated," I said finally. Daniel nodded, no judgment in his eyes. It always is until suddenly it isn't, but no pressure, everyone's timeline is their own. He changed the subject then, letting me breathe again, and I was grateful and disappointed all at once. Because part of me wanted him to push, to give me a reason to finally say the words out loud. We exchanged numbers as the afternoon light began to fade, and when Daniel hugged me goodbye, a warm, firm embrace that lasted a heartbeat longer than friendship, I felt something inside me shift. Like a door I'd been holding shut had just cracked open, letting in a sliver of dangerous light. The next 6 weeks were a study in beautiful torture. Daniel and I fell into an easy rhythm, coffee dates that turned into lunch meetings that became dinner and drinks, dinners that stretched until the bars closed and we stood outside his apartment or mine, neither wanting to say goodnight. We collaborated on a small community garden project, working late nights in my cramped office or his sun-filled studio. Our hands would brush over blueprint paper. Our shoulders would touch as we leaned over the same design. Once he fell asleep on my couch during a movie, his head tilted toward me, and I spent 2 hours frozen in place, terrified to move and break the spell. "Your boyfriend's here," my colleague Sarah called one afternoon when Daniel showed up at my office with Thai food and that devastating smile. "He's not, we're not," I stammered. "Uh-huh," she said knowingly, walking away with a grin. Daniel raised an eyebrow, smooth. "Sarah's just, she doesn't know." "That we're not dating?" His tone was light but his eyes were serious. "Because from where I'm standing, Alex, we're doing everything people who are dating do, except, the actual dating part." My throat went tight. "Daniel. I'm not trying to pressure you," he said quickly, setting down the food. "But I need you to know I like you, a lot. And I think you like me too, but I also think you're scared, and that's okay. I need to know if this is going somewhere or if I'm setting myself up to get hurt." The honesty in his voice cracked something in my chest. Here was this incredible man, talented, open, brave, offering himself to me, and I was too much of a coward to reach back. "I do like you," I admitted, the words feeling simultaneously too big and not nearly big enough. "You have no idea how much, but my family, my dad, doesn't know you're gay. Doesn't know I'm anything." I slumped into my desk chair. "My dad is John Carter, retired Marine Corps colonel, votes Republican, goes to church every Sunday. His idea of affection is a firm handshake and a good job, son, and I'm his only kid, the one who's supposed to carry on the family name, marry a nice girl, give him grandchildren." Daniel sat on the edge of my desk. "And you think if you tell him the truth, you'll lose him?" "I know I will," my voice cracked. "I've watched him react to stories on the news, listened to him talk about traditional values. He's not a bad man, Daniel, he's just old school, set in his ways, and I'm not strong enough to watch his disappointment, to see him look at me and see someone less than what he wanted. So instead you're planning to just, be alone forever, pretend." "I don't know," the words came out harsher than I intended. "I don't have it figured out, okay? Some of us don't get to come out at 16 and have everything work out fine." Daniel flinched, and immediately I hated myself. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "My coming out wasn't easy, Alex. I lost my best friend, my grandparents didn't speak to me for 2 years. I'm just choosing to focus on what I gained instead of what I lost." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "It's fine," he stood, grabbing his jacket. "But you need to figure out what you want, because I can't be your secret. I've worked too hard to be visible, to go back into someone else's closet, even yours, especially yours." He left, and I sat alone in my office with cold Thai food and the sinking realization that I was about to lose the best thing that had ever happened to me because I was too afraid to claim it. November arrived with characteristic Seattle gloom, and I threw myself into work trying to ignore the Daniel-shaped absence in my life. He'd texted once, "Still here when you're ready, no pressure." The message sat on my phone like both a promise and an accusation. Then my mom called. "Alex, honey, just finalizing Thanksgiving plans. Your father and I are so excited to have you home. Are you bringing anyone special?" The question was innocent, habitual, but it landed like a bomb. "No, Mom, just me." "Well, that's fine, plenty of time, you're young, but Deborah's daughter Jennifer will be there. She just finished her residency and your father thought maybe." "Mom," I cut her off more sharply than intended, "I'm not interested in Jennifer." "Oh, well, it was just a thought. We worry about you up there all alone in Seattle. You work too much, sweetheart. Life is about more than just career. Your father and I want to see you happy, settled. After we hung up, I sat in my dark apartment and thought about happiness, about settlement, about the way Daniel's laugh sounded like home and the way my father's approval had always felt like both oxygen and chains. I picked up my phone and dialed before I could overthink it. Alex. Daniel's voice was cautious, hopeful. "Come to Thanksgiving with me," I blurted out. "Come meet my family, I want you there." Silence, then carefully, "As your friend or as your boyfriend?" This was it, the moment, the cliff's edge. "As my boyfriend," I whispered, and saying it out loud felt like learning to breathe for the first time. "If you'll still have me after I've been such an idiot." "I'll always have you, Alex," Daniel said softly. "But are you sure? I don't want you to do this before you're ready. Coming out isn't something you can take back." "I'm not ready," I admitted. "But I'm tired of waiting to live my life, and I'm tired of not kissing you when all I want to do is kiss you." I could hear the smile in his voice. "Well, we should definitely fix that last part immediately. I'm outside your building." "What?" "I've been sitting out here for 20 minutes trying to convince myself not to come up and tell you that I'm falling in love with you and I don't care how complicated it is." I was moving before I finished processing his words, down the stairs and through the lobby, out into the cold November night where Daniel stood by his car looking nervous and beautiful and real. "Say that again," I demanded, breathless. "Which part?" "The love part." He stepped closer, and I could see the way the streetlight caught the gold flecks in his hazel eyes. "I'm falling in love with you, Alex Carter. Have been since you crashed into me outside Pike Place Market with your coffee and your beautiful drawings and those eyes that see everything except how extraordinary you are." I closed the distance between us, and when our lips met, it felt like every book and song and movie had been trying to explain this moment but never quite captured it. The way the whole world could narrow to a single point of contact, the way your heart could race and calm simultaneously, the way you could feel found and lost and saved all at once. We kissed on that Seattle sidewalk like we were the only two people in the city in the world, and when we finally broke apart, I pressed my forehead to his. "I'm terrified," I whispered. "I know, but you're also brave, braver than you think." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. "We'll do this together. Whatever happens with your dad, with your family, you're not alone, not anymore." And standing there with Daniel's hand in mine, feeling the weight of 23 years of secrets finally beginning to lift, I let myself believe him. The week before Thanksgiving passed in a blur of alternating excitement and dread. Daniel moved through my life like sunlight breaking through Seattle's persistent clouds. We cooked dinner together in my tiny kitchen. He stayed over most nights, though we took things slow, learning each other's bodies with the reverence of sacred texts. And for the first time, I understood what people meant when they talked about being in a relationship that felt easy and right. But beneath the happiness lurked a constant, gnawing anxiety. "What if he kicks me out?" I asked one night, lying in bed with my head on Daniel's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "What if he tells me never to come back?" Daniel's fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. "Then you come back to Seattle to me and we build a new family, one that chooses to see you." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, it's just necessary." He tilted my chin up to meet his eyes. "But Alex, I need you to promise me something. You're not doing this for me, you can't. This has to be for you, because you deserve to live out loud whether I'm in the picture or not." "You are in the picture," I said firmly. "You're the whole damn picture." He kissed me then, soft and slow, and I tried to memorize the feeling, just in case everything fell apart and these stolen moments of happiness were all I'd have to remember. My mom called twice more that week, each time bubbling with excitement about Thanksgiving dinner, about how my father had taken an extra day off work, about how they'd cleaned my old room and stocked up on my favorite foods. Each conversation felt like a betrayal I was actively planning, and the guilt sat heavy in my stomach. "You could wait," Daniel suggested on Wednesday afternoon as we packed for the trip to my hometown of Spokane. "Tell them after the holiday, there's no rush." I shook my head. "If I don't do it now, I'll talk myself out of it. Again, I've been talking myself out of it my whole life, Daniel. I'm done hiding." Even as I said it, my hands trembled while folding clothes into my duffel bag. We drove out Thursday morning, Daniel's hand resting on my thigh as I-90 carried us east across Washington state, through the mountains and into the broader landscapes beyond. The closer we got to Spokane, the quieter I became. "Talk to me," Daniel said finally. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the summer I was 14, I said, eyes on the road. "I went to basketball camp and there was this counselor, Ryan. He was 17, captain of his high school team, and I had this crush on him that I didn't understand yet, didn't have words for. One night some of the other kids found out Ryan was gay. They vandalized his car, called him slurs, and I stood there and did nothing, said nothing, because I was afraid they'd know, that they'd see it in me too." Daniel's hand tightened on my leg. "When I got home, I told my dad about it, left out the part about my crush, obviously, and you know what he said? He said, that's what happens when people push their lifestyle on kids. He had no business being around impressionable boys. And I just agreed, laughed it off, betrayed Ryan and betrayed myself in one cowardly moment." "You were 14, Alex." "I was a coward and I've been one ever since." I blinked back tears. "Ryan deserved better, I deserve better, and so do you." "Hey," Daniel made me pull over at a rest stop, turning in his seat to face me fully. "Listen to me, you were a kid trying to survive in a world that taught you your truth was dangerous. That's not cowardice, that's survival. But you're not that scared 14-year-old anymore. You're a man who's choosing courage even when it terrifies him. That's everything, Alex, that's everything." I kissed him there in the rest stop parking lot, truck drivers and families streaming past, and for once I didn't care who saw. My childhood home sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees, their leaves long since fallen into brown piles along the curb. The house was exactly as I remembered: white siding, blue shutters, the American flag my father raised every morning hanging from the porch. Daniel whistled low, very normal Rockwell. "That's one way to put it." I killed the engine, but neither of us moved to get out. "We can still leave," Daniel offered. "Drive back to Seattle, order Chinese food, pretend this never happened." Tempting, but no. I forced myself to open the door. "Let's do this before I lose my nerve entirely." My mother opened the door before we made it up the walk, her face lighting up with that particular joy mothers reserve for their children coming home. "Alex, oh sweetheart, let me look at you, you're too thin. Are you eating? Seattle must be agreeing with you though, you look happy." She pulled me into a crushing hug. Then turned to Daniel with curiosity. "And you must be a friend from work." "Mom, this is Daniel Chen, my boyfriend." The word stuck slightly in my throat, but I forced it out. "Daniel, this is my mom, Margaret Carter." I watched my mother's expression carefully, the split second of surprise, the recalibration, the forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Boyfriend, of course, how wonderful." Her voice was bright, brittle. "John, Alex is here." My father emerged from his study and my entire body tensed. Colonel John Carter, even in retirement, carried himself with military bearing: square shoulders, firm jaw, steel gray hair cut short. At 62, he still looked like he could run a marathon and then dress down a platoon. "Son," he gripped my hand in his trademark firm handshake, then his gaze shifted to Daniel. "And who's this?" "Dad, this is Daniel, my boyfriend." The word fell into the space between us like a grenade, and I watched my father's face go through a rapid series of micro-expressions: confusion, comprehension, and something harder to read that might have been anger or might have been pain. "Your boyfriend," he repeated, voice flat. "Yes, sir." The silence stretched, painful and thick. My mother made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob, and pressed her hand to her mouth. "Well," my father said finally, his tone controlled in that particular way that signaled barely contained emotion. "This is unexpected. Margaret, let's set another place at dinner. Daniel, was it? Welcome to our home." He turned and walked back into his study, the door closing with decisive quietness. "He's just surprised," my mother said quickly, too quickly. "We all are. It's a lot to process, honey, you understand, but of course Daniel is welcome. Let me show you boys to your rooms," plural, separate rooms. Daniel caught my eye, a question in his expression, but I shook my head slightly, one battle at a time. Thanksgiving dinner was a masterclass in tension. My mother had outdone herself with the cooking: turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie, but the food sat heavy in my stomach, every bite requiring conscious effort to swallow. My father barely spoke, directing his few comments to my mother or asking generic questions about my work. He didn't acknowledge Daniel except when absolutely necessary for politeness, referring to him as your friend despite my earlier correction. So Daniel, my mother said with forced cheer, what is it you do? I'm a landscape architect, Mrs. Carter. Actually, Alex and I met while working on a waterfront project. His building designs and my landscape work complement each other beautifully. How nice, and your family, are they here in Washington? San Francisco, but I chose Seattle for grad school and fell in love with the Pacific Northwest. The natural beauty here is incredible. Must be different from California, my father said, his first direct comment to Daniel all evening. More conservative values out here in the eastern part of the state. The subtext was clear, and I felt anger flare in my chest. Dad, I think people are people wherever you go, sir, Daniel said calmly, meeting my father's gaze. Good and bad in every place, conservative and liberal. I've found what matters most isn't where you live but how you live, whether you treat others with respect and dignity. My father's jaw tightened. That's a nice philosophy. In practice, some lifestyles require more acceptance than others. Not everyone's comfortable with that. Then maybe that's their issue to work through, not mine. Daniel's voice remained even, but I could hear the steel underneath. With respect, Colonel Carter, I'm not asking for your comfort, but I am asking for basic courtesy toward someone your son cares about. The room went silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My mother looked stricken, my father's expression was thunderous. Maybe we should clear the table, I said desperately, standing. Sit down, Alex, my father's command voice, the one that had sent Marines scrambling. We're going to discuss this. Now, when exactly were you planning to tell your mother and me about this situation? It's not a situation, Dad, it's my life, my relationship, and I'm telling you now. After 23 years, after we paid for your education, supported every decision, welcomed you home. Welcomed me home as someone I'm not. The words burst out of me, years of suppressed frustration finally breaking free. You welcomed home the version of Alex you wanted me to be. The straight son who'd marry a nice girl and give you grandchildren and fit perfectly into your picture of what a man should be. But that's not who I am, Dad, it never was. You don't know what you're saying, this is probably just a phase, some confusion. I'm gay, I shouted, standing now, trembling. I'm gay, Dad, I've always been gay, since before I understood what it meant, since before I had words for it. And I've spent my entire life terrified to tell you because I knew you'd react exactly like this. My father stood too, his face flushed. So this is my fault, because I raised you with values, with structure, with expectations of decency. Being gay doesn't make me indecent. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. It doesn't make me less than what you wanted. I'm still your son. I still became an architect like we talked about. I still work hard and try to make you proud. The only difference is I'm finally being honest about who I love. That's not a small difference, Alex. My father's voice cracked slightly. Do you have any idea what this means, how people will talk, what this does to our family's reputation? That's what you care about, reputation, other people's opinions. I laughed bitterly. I thought you taught me to have integrity, to live with honor. How is hiding who I am honorable? John, my mother's voice quiet but firm, she was crying too. That's enough. Stay out of this, Margaret. No, she stood, surprising us both. No, I won't stay out of this. He's my son too, our son. And if you can't see past your pride and your prejudice long enough to recognize that he's the same wonderful young man he was yesterday before you knew, then maybe you need to think about what you're actually standing for. My father stared at her, then at me, then at Daniel, who'd remained quietly seated throughout the exchange. When he spoke again, his voice was low and controlled, but I could hear the pain underneath. I need time to process this. I don't know what to say right now. He looked at me and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, uncertainty, vulnerability. I raised you the best I knew how, Alex. I tried to give you everything, and now I feel like I don't know you at all. You do know me, Dad, you just never let yourself see all of me. He shook his head slowly, then walked to his study without another word. The door closed and the sound echoed through the house like a final verdict. I found Daniel on the back porch, sitting on the swing where I used to read as a kid. The November air was cold, sharp, but he didn't seem to notice. I'm sorry, I said, sitting beside him. I'm so sorry you had to witness that. Don't apologize, you were incredible in there. He took my hand. I'm just sorry it went the way it did. I knew it would, I just hoped. I trailed off, not sure how to finish. Hoped he'd surprise me, hoped years of conditional love could be rewritten in a single conversation. My mother came out a few minutes later, wrapped in a cardigan, her eyes red from crying. Alex, honey, can we talk? Daniel started to stand, but she waved him back down. No, stay, this involves you too. She sat in the wicker chair across from us, studying her hands. I won't pretend I'm not shocked. I am, but more than that, I'm sad, not because you're gay. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I'm sad because you felt you couldn't tell us, that you've been carrying this alone for so long. What kind of mother does that make me, that my own son was afraid to share his truth? Mom, let me finish. Your father, he's struggling. This challenges everything he believes about the world, about family, about masculinity. But he loves you, Alex, he does, he's just scared. Scared of not understanding, scared of losing you, scared of what this means. He has a funny way of showing love, I said bitterly. He does, she agreed. He's never been good with emotions, you know that. The military taught him to be strong, stoic, controlled. But underneath that armor is a man who carried your picture in his wallet through 2 tours overseas, who called every week when you were at college just to hear your voice, who tells everyone he meets about his son, the architect. Tears welled up again. Then why can't he just accept me? He will, I think, I hope. She reached over and squeezed my knee. But Alex, even if he doesn't, even if this takes longer than any of us want, you did the right thing. Living honestly is always the right choice, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She turned to Daniel then. I'm sorry for how he treated you. You seem like a lovely young man. Anyone who makes my son look as happy as he did when you two walked up that driveway is someone I want to know better. Daniel's eyes went suspiciously bright. Thank you, Mrs. Carter, that means more than you know. Call me Margaret, and you boys should probably start thinking about where you're staying tonight. The guest room is yours if you want it, but I understand if you'd rather go to a hotel. We'll stay, I said, surprising myself. If that's okay, I'm not going to be chased out of my own home by fear, not anymore. She smiled, sad but proud. That's my boy, now come inside before you both freeze to death. I made 3 kinds of pie and they're not going to eat themselves. Daniel and I lay in twin beds in my childhood room. The same room where I'd agonized over algebra homework and dreamed of building skyscrapers and tried desperately to convince myself that what I felt for other boys was just admiration, just normal, just something that would go away if I ignored it hard enough. Can I come over there? Daniel whispered into the darkness. Please. He crossed the space between beds and slid in beside me, and we lay there in the narrow twin mattress, wrapped around each other like we could protect ourselves from the world through sheer physical proximity. I'm proud of you, Daniel murmured against my hair. You were so brave tonight. I felt like I was going to throw up the entire time. Brave doesn't mean unafraid, it means afraid and doing it anyway. I could hear movement downstairs, my mother cleaning up, I assumed, but I could also hear the low rumble of my father's voice, though I couldn't make out words. What if he never comes around? I asked. What if this is it, polite tolerance at best, estrangement at worst? Then it will hurt like hell and you'll grieve for the relationship you wanted but never had, and eventually, slowly, you'll build a life so beautiful and full that the loss feels less like an open wound and more like an old scar. Still there, still tender sometimes, but not bleeding anymore. Is that what happened with you and your grandparents? Yeah, they didn't come to my graduation, didn't meet my last boyfriend, still won't acknowledge that part of my life, and it hurts, it probably always will. But I have friends who've become family, parents who chose love over prejudice, a community that celebrates me exactly as I am. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into other people's limited vision, Alex. You can just grow and find people who have room for all of you. I kissed him then, soft and grateful, tasting salt from tears I didn't realize I was crying. I love you, I whispered against his lips. I should have said it before, I love you, Daniel Chen, you make me want to be braver than I am. You already are that brave, you just needed to see it. He pressed his forehead to mine, and I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. We fell asleep like that, tangled together in my childhood bed, and for a few hours I let myself feel safe. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of low voices carrying up through the heating vents. Daniel was still asleep beside me, his face peaceful in the gray morning light filtering through my old bedroom curtains. I carefully extracted myself from his arms and pulled on a sweatshirt, my heart hammering as I crept downstairs. My parents were in the kitchen. My mother stood at the stove making pancakes while my father sat at the table with his coffee and newspaper, the same tableau I'd witnessed thousands of times growing up. Except today, everything felt different, fragile. "Morning," I said quietly from the doorway. My mother turned with a smile that didn't quite hide her puffy eyes. "Good morning, sweetheart, coffee. Please." My father didn't look up from his paper and the silence was suffocating. I poured my coffee and was about to retreat back upstairs when he finally spoke. "Sit down, Alex." It wasn't a request, I sat. He folded the newspaper with military precision and set it aside, then looked at me directly for the first time since last night's disaster. His eyes were bloodshot, and I realized with a shock that he'd probably been awake all night. "I owe you an apology," he said, and I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Colonel John Carter did not apologize, it wasn't in his vocabulary. "Not for my beliefs, I can't change those overnight, but for how I reacted, for making you feel like you had to hide, for," he paused, struggling, "for failing to make you feel safe enough to tell me sooner." "Dad." "Let me finish." He took a deep breath. "After you went to bed, your mother and I stayed up talking. She reminded me of some things I'd apparently forgot. Like the time you were 12 and asked if people who loved each other could be different from what other people expected, and I shut down the conversation because I assumed you were asking about interracial marriage. I didn't even consider." He cleared his throat. "I didn't see what was right in front of me. Didn't want to see it, maybe. I got pretty good at hiding it," I said quietly. "You shouldn't have had to." My mother's voice was thick with emotion. "That's on us, honey, on the environment we created." My father nodded stiffly. "I've spent my whole life believing certain things about masculinity, about family, about the natural order of things. I'm not going to tell you those beliefs disappeared overnight because you told me you're gay. That would be a lie." The words hurt, but I appreciated the honesty. "But," he continued, and I held my breath, "I've also spent my whole life believing that family comes first, that loyalty matters, that you stand by your people even when it's hard. And you're my people, Alex, you're my son. That hasn't changed even if everything else feels like it has." "I'm still the same person I was before you knew," I said. "Same son who helped you build that deck out back. Same son who learned to throw a baseball from you. Same son who wants to make you proud." "I know that up here," he tapped his temple. "Getting it to settle here," he placed his hand over his heart. "That's going to take time. I need you to be patient with me while I adjust." It wasn't acceptance, it wasn't the tearful embrace and immediate understanding I'd secretly hoped for, but it was something, it was a start. "I can do patient," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I've been patient my whole life." "Then maybe it's my turn to learn it." He stood abruptly, and for a moment I thought he was leaving. Instead, he walked around the table and did something he hadn't done since I was a small child. He hugged me. It was awkward and brief, his back stiff, but his arms were firm around my shoulders. "I love you, son," he said gruffly, "even when I don't understand you." I clutched the back of his shirt, breathing in his familiar scent of Old Spice and coffee, and let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we'd find our way through this. Daniel came down a half-hour later, clearly nervous about facing my parents in the cold light of day, but my father surprised us both. "Daniel," he extended his hand, "I'd like to apologize for my behavior last night. You're a guest in our home and I treated you poorly. That was wrong." Daniel shook his hand, clearly shocked. "Thank you, sir, I appreciate that. I understand you're a landscape architect. Marine Corps actually has a landscape services division, different branch entirely from my world, but I've always respected the work. Takes skill to understand how natural systems integrate with human structures." It was stilted, formal, but it was an effort. My father was trying in his own rigid way to build a bridge. "It does," Daniel agreed, relaxing slightly. "Similar to what Alex does with buildings, actually. We're both trying to create spaces where people feel comfortable, natural, like they belong." My father's expression flickered. I couldn't tell if he caught the subtext or not, but he nodded and gestured to the table. "Your mother made enough pancakes to feed a battalion, might as well eat them." Breakfast was awkward but not hostile. My father asked Daniel questions about his work, his education, his family. My mother told embarrassing stories about my childhood. Daniel charmed them both with his easy humor and genuine interest in their stories, and I sat there watching this surreal scene unfold, marveling at how quickly the world could shift on its axis. After breakfast, my father retreated to his study, old habits. My mother explained with an apologetic smile, but invited me to join him for his afternoon walk later. Another habit, another small offering of normalcy. Daniel and I spent the morning helping my mother clean up, and she used the time to ask Daniel questions she couldn't at dinner: where we met, what he loved about me. My face burned during that part, what our plans were. "We're taking it one day at a time," Daniel said diplomatically. "But I care about him deeply, Mrs. Carter, Margaret. He's special. The way his mind works, the way he sees possibilities in empty spaces, he makes me want to be better." My mother's eyes went soft. "He's always been like that, even as a little boy, always building, creating, imagining. I used to worry he lived too much in his head, in his designs and blueprints, but maybe that was his way of building a world where he could exist fully, where he was safe." The insight gutted me. Had she always known on some level? Had she been waiting for me to trust her with my truth? "He's safe with me," Daniel said quietly. "I promise you that." She squeezed his hand. "I believe you." That afternoon, I joined my father for his daily 3-mile walk through the neighborhood. We fell into step beside each other, our breath fogging in the cold November air, saying nothing for the first 10 minutes. Finally, he broke the silence. "When did you know?" The question was so direct, so unexpectedly vulnerable, that I stumbled over my response. "I don't know exactly. Parts of me always knew, I think, but I didn't have language for it until high school. Even then, I tried to convince myself it was just confusion, that it would go away. Because of me. Because of everything: society, church, locker room talk. But yeah, Dad, because of you too, because I heard how you talked about gay people, the jokes, the disgust in your voice, and I thought if you knew the truth about me, I'd lose you forever." He was quiet for a long time, our footsteps the only sound on the empty sidewalk. "I had a friend in the Corps." His voice was careful, measured. "Staff Sergeant Mike Perkins saved my life in Fallujah, took a bullet that was meant for me. We were close as brothers. Then in 2004, before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, someone found out he was gay. He was discharged, dishonorably, lost his pension, his benefits, everything." I waited, sensing there was more. I didn't speak up for him, didn't defend him. We'd been through hell together, and when it mattered, I chose my career over his dignity. Told myself he'd violated the rules, that it was his own fault. But really, he paused, his jaw working. Really, I was a coward, and Mike knew it. Last thing he said to me was, "I thought you were better than this, John. Guess I was wrong." "Dad." I haven't spoken to him since, don't even know if he's alive, and it's one of my biggest regrets. He stopped walking, turning to face me. "So when you told me you're gay, Alex, part of what you saw last night wasn't just prejudice, it was shame. Shame that I've created a world where you felt the same fear Mike must have felt. Shame that I'm still that coward who values comfort over courage." I'd never heard my father talk like this, so raw, so undefended. "You're not a coward, Dad. You're here now, trying. That counts for something." "Does it?" His eyes were bright. "Because I look at you and that young man in our kitchen, and I see something I never had with your mother, not taking anything away from her, but you and Daniel. There's an ease there, a joy. And my first instinct was to reject it because it challenged what I thought I knew. That's not bravery, son, that's fear dressed up as principle." "So what do we do now?" He started walking again, slower this time. "We do the hard work. I read, I learn, I challenge my assumptions. I try to become the father you deserved all along instead of the one you got. And you just keep being yourself, living your truth, loving who you love." "Can you really change, after a lifetime of believing certain things?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I have to try, because the alternative is losing you, and that's not acceptable. You're my son, Alex, my only child, and I refuse to let pride or prejudice take you from me." We walked the rest of the route in companionable silence, and when we returned home, he clasped my shoulder, his version of affection, and said, "Bring Daniel out here, I want to show him something." My father led us to the garage, pulling down a box of old photo albums I hadn't seen in years. "Margaret's been after me to digitize these," he said, brushing off dust. "Never got around to it, but I was up last night, couldn't sleep, came out here and started looking through them." He opened the first album and there I was, gap-toothed and grinning, maybe 7 years old, wearing a tool belt and standing next to my father at a construction site. "That was the summer we built the Habitat house," my father said. "You insisted on helping even though you were too small to do much besides hand me nails, but you were so determined, told me you were going to build whole cities someday." He flipped through more pages, me at various ages, at baseball games and science fairs, graduation ceremonies and family vacations. In every photo, my smile looked careful, measured, like I was performing rather than living. "You know what I noticed last night?" my father said. "In all these photos you look guarded, like you're holding yourself back. But this morning at breakfast when you were laughing at something Daniel said, you looked free, open, like I was finally seeing my actual son instead of the version you thought I wanted to see." Daniel's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "I want more of those pictures," my father continued. "The real ones, the ones where you're not performing, so I'm asking both of you, would you come back for Christmas? Bring your camera, we'll take new photos, better ones, the kind where everyone gets to be themselves." It was such a small thing, such a simple invitation, but it meant everything. "Yeah, Dad," I said, voice thick, "we'd love that." Sunday morning, we packed up for the drive back to Seattle. My mother hugged us both fiercely, making us promise to visit again soon. My father shook Daniel's hand, then in a move that shocked all of us, pulled him into a brief, awkward hug. "Take care of each other," he said gruffly, "and Alex, call your mother, she worries." "I will, Dad." He looked at me for a long moment and I could see him wrestling with words he didn't quite have yet. Finally, he just nodded and stepped back. As we drove away, I watched my parents standing together in the driveway, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders, both of them waving. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving part of myself behind. "That was," Daniel trailed off, shaking his head, "not what I expected." "Me neither," I laced my fingers through his. "It's not perfect. There's still going to be awkward moments, things he doesn't understand, probably some backsliding, but it's more than I hoped for." "Your mom's incredible." "She is, always has been. I should have trusted her with this years ago." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape rolling past, before Daniel spoke again. "So, Christmas at the Carters, do I need to start preparing now?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Probably. My dad will want to quiz you on your 5-year plan and career goals," very military of him. "I can handle that. My 5-year plan currently involves a lot of waking up next to you, so I'm feeling confident." My heart did that fluttering thing it always did when Daniel said stuff like that, casual declarations of permanence, like our future together was already decided, already certain. "I like that plan," I said softly. "Yes." "Yeah, though we might want to find a bigger apartment. Mine is not built for 2 people and all your plants." "Are you asking me to move in with you, Alex Carter?" "I guess I am. Is that crazy? We've only been officially together for a few weeks." "When you know, you know." He raised our joined hands to his lips. "And I know, I've known since you crashed into me with your coffee and your beautiful drawings and turned my entire world upside down." "Technically you crashed into me." "Details," he grinned. "So yes, absolutely yes, I'll move in with you, though fair warning, I come with a lot of houseplants and a possibly unhealthy addiction to cooking shows." "I think I can live with that." 3 weeks later, Daniel's boxes filled my apartment, now our apartment. His plants lined the windowsills, his books integrated with mine on the shelves, his toothbrush in the holder next to mine. Small, domestic details that transformed a space into a home. We christened the new arrangement with dinner at our tiny kitchen table, candles flickering between us, rain pattering against the windows in typical Seattle fashion. "To new beginnings," Daniel toasted, raising his wine glass. "To courage," I added, "and to second chances." "To your mom, who's been texting me recipes." "She has not." "She absolutely has. Apparently, I need to know your favorite comfort foods for when you're stressed." I laughed, warmth spreading through my chest. "She's adopted you." "I'll take it. Your family is." "They're trying, Alex, really trying. Your dad sent me an article about sustainable landscape design yesterday, just forwarded it without comment, but still. That's huge for him, trust me." My phone buzzed with a text and I glanced at it automatically. My heart skipped. It's my dad. He wants to know if we're free for dinner next weekend, says he wants us to meet. Oh my God. What? He wants us to meet Mike, Staff Sergeant Mike Perkins. He tracked him down, they talked. Dad's apologizing. After all these years, he's actually making it right. Daniel's eyes went bright. That's incredible. He says Mike's married now to his husband of 15 years. They live in Tacoma, and Dad wants to, he wants to get to know them, to learn from them. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, trying to process this evolution in real time. He's trying to be better, I said wonderingly. For me, for us, he's actually changing. People can surprise you, Daniel said softly, when they're motivated by love. That night, lying tangled together in our bed, a concept that still felt miraculous, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From that rainy collision outside Pike Place Market to this moment, this home, this man whose breathing was evening out into sleep beside me. Daniel, I whispered, not sure if he was still awake. Thank you. For what? For being patient with me, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for loving me enough to push me toward my truth. He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at me in the darkness. You did the hard part, Alex. You chose courage over comfort. That was all you. It was us, I corrected. Everything good is us. He kissed me then, soft and slow and full of promise, and I tasted our future in it. Lazy Sunday mornings and creative collaborations, holiday dinners and inside jokes, challenges overcome and dreams built together, brick by brick. I love you, he murmured against my lips. I love you too, so much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? The best kind of scared, the kind that means you're alive and the stakes are real and you've got something worth protecting. He pulled me closer and we lay there listening to the rain and each other's heartbeats, and for the first time in my life I felt completely at peace with every part of myself. Christmas at my parents' house was chaos in the best way. Daniel and I had driven out 2 days early to help prepare, and the house was full of light and laughter and the smell of my mother's famous gingerbread. But the biggest surprise was the additional guests. Mike Perkins and his husband Robert sat at our dining table, sharing wine and stories with my father like old friends reunited. Which I suppose they were. Over the past year my dad had worked to rebuild that bridge he'd burned, and watching him now, laughing at Mike's jokes, asking Robert about his work as a high school teacher, I saw a man transformed by his own willingness to grow. Never thought I'd see the day, Mike said at one point, gesturing around the table. John Carter breaking bread with a couple of old queens and his gay son and son-in-law. Boyfriend, I corrected automatically, but Daniel's hand tightened on mine. Actually, Daniel said, and my heart stopped because I knew that tone. He turned to me, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. I was hopping to upgrade that title. Alex Carter, you are the most brilliant, brave, beautiful man I've ever known. You challenge me, inspire me, and make me want to be worthy of the love you give so freely. Would you marry me? The room went silent. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's expression was unreadable. And I looked at this man who'd crashed into my life and broken down every wall I'd built, and there was only one possible answer. Yes, God, yes, 1,000 times yes. The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. My mother was crying, Robert whistled, Mike clapped Daniel on the back. And my father stood, clearing his throat in that formal way of his. Daniel, welcome to our family, officially. He extended his hand, then seemed to reconsider and pulled Daniel into a hug instead. Take care of my son, though honestly he's pretty good at taking care of himself these days. He turned to me and I saw pride in his eyes, real, genuine pride. I'm proud of you, Alex, not for what you've accomplished professionally, though that's impressive too. I'm proud of the man you've become, the honest man, the brave man. You taught this old dog new tricks, and that's not easy. Thanks, Dad, I managed, voice breaking. Now, my mother interjected, ever practical, we need to start planning a wedding. Oh, this is wonderful, I have so many ideas. Mom, we just got engaged literally 2 minutes ago. Which means we're already behind schedule. Everyone laughed, and as I looked around the table, at my parents who'd chosen growth over rigidity, at Mike and Robert who'd survived their own battles, at Daniel who'd loved me into courage, I felt the full weight of gratitude for this imperfect, beautiful, hard-won happiness. Later that night, Daniel and I stood on the back porch where we'd stood a year ago, both of us changed in ways we couldn't have predicted. No regrets, he asked, the ring glinting on my finger in the moonlight. Not a single one, you. Only that I didn't crash into you sooner. I kissed him, tasting peppermint and promise, and thought about 14-year-old Alex who'd been too afraid to defend Ryan, about 23-year-old Alex who'd almost let fear win. I wished I could go back and tell them both that it would be okay, more than okay. That courage compounds, that truth heals, that love, the right love, the true love doesn't ask you to shrink, it asks you to expand, to become the fullest version of yourself. And standing there under the stars with Daniel's arms around me and my father's acceptance warming me from the inside out, I finally understood what it meant to come home, not to a place, but to yourself. To live out loud. To love without apology. To be finally and completely free.